You are listening to SPN, the Sports Podcasting Network.
Ya lo hace, pierna derecha, directo al arco, golazo, golazo, golazo.
This is Soccer Today, live on SPN Radio, your new live show about the beautiful game in all its glory, with Duane, Rollins and Kevin Laramee. MLS, EPL, La Liga, Champions League, all is fair game. Powered by the Sports Podcasting Network. Visit us at sportspodcastingnetwork.com.
And welcome to Soccer Today. Duane Rollins and myself, Kevin Laramee. As always, Duane, I was there last night, but how did you enjoy those, what seems to be always cracker of a game in the Canadian Championship?
You know what, Kevin? Look, I don't mean to be a troll, and some people might think that I'm always a troll, but I don't mean to be a troll. But there was a point in that game after Vancouver scored the second goal where there was no bad result for a TFC troll. Because either the Whitecaps were going to spectacularly lose in the Voyageurs Cup again, or the Impact were going to spectacularly lose in the Voyageurs Cup. And really, either way it would have worked. But no, the better team won, and it was a I tweeted out that the tie was bananas. BANANAS, Kevin. That was a bananas tie.
It was crazy. Especially the second. The first leg was nothing spectacular. It was 2-1, but the second one, 4-2 last night, 5-4 on aggregate. 5-4 on aggregate. It was crazy.
Yeah.
The atmosphere at the beginning of the game, Vancouver played decently. The Montreal got 2 penalties. One was clear cut. The other one was, kind of a foul, and it's on the box. So, yeah, it's like 50-50. Would maybe be reasonable there, but 2 goals up. And then, I don't know, it's those Canadian nights. There's something about those Canadian nights.
Yeah, look, we talked about this last week. The Whitecaps and the Impact, they have a rivalry that is not as appreciated as it should be. And, the distance doesn't make a lot of sense, but you got to keep in mind that these were, for years, if you're listening to this outside Canada, the best 2 clubs in Canada. And even though they are so far apart, and there's no real natural rivalry there between the cities, really, it was just really a cracker of a game always. They hated each other in the USL, and now that they moved up to MLS, and they play so often in all the Canadian teams. And the Canadian rivals are really driven by this competition, by the Voyageurs Cup, look, if Toronto gets it done tonight, we're going to see 2 more games against the Impact and TFC, which, it happens every year, and that's what drives a true rivalry, is how often you play each other, how often you see each other. So I think that...
Here's the question, Duane. I asked that last night to other journalists, too. If you're Toronto, and you already have a lot of games to play, and you have a chance to maybe save 2, do you throw in the towel tonight, knowing that the Voyageurs... No, but look, here, just hear me out. Knowing that the winner of the Voyageurs Cup has to face you anyways to go to the Champions League. So you're not losing that spot until you play at home, and they can be confident. They can be both the teams that are playing. So, I don't know, to save potentially 2 games. Well, do you actually, where I'm going with this?
I hear you, and I think the logic that you're putting out there is not without some merit. I'll say that, but I think maybe you're overthinking it a little bit.
No, for sure.
I think TFC at this point.
No, for sure. They're not going to, they have to go for the win. You can't tell your players, okay, tag the game. It doesn't work like that. But.
Yeah, this is a team that's won 7 of its last 8 games, is undefeated in 8, only has lost 1 game this year if you want to include the Ottawa game, and I suppose we should, considering we're talking about this. So it's 7 of 9 that they've won. Look, I think that really what this comes down to, there's no way I think that they're going to put out a lineup that is not as strong as it can be, and that's not necessarily going to be, and we'll get back to talk about the Whitecaps and the Impact in a minute, but that's not to say that that it's going to be as strong as it could be if there were no restrictions on it, but there are restrictions on it tonight because Josie Alstar and Michael Bradley aren't there because of U.S. duties. Saba's probably still hurt, although there's some rumblings that the team may play, which could you imagine? Jamaica and myself, but anyway.
Lance versus Jamaica. That's interesting.
Yes. Anyway,
no
let's
offense
put
to
that
Lisa.
Yeah, aside. And look, their pride is wounded by the way that it happened last week. There is no way that some of those kids didn't, and Raheem Edwards is out too, obviously, because of the red card. So the lineup they put out there tonight will well be a bit experimental in terms of what you'd normally see in an MLS match, but it's still going to be the Vasquez, I think. Vasquez came up in the 60th minute on Friday because I think at that point, Greg Vanney looked at him and went, okay, this game's in hand. Let's get him some rest so that we can play him midweek because we're relying on him right now. And then, I think we talked about this in the last show. Vasquez, he is sneaking his way into the conversation for the MVP in the league right now. This is a player that really, if he's on the pitch, is going to be very difficult for a team like Ottawa to handle. So, no, I don't think the two games bothers them. That's my short answer. I just made a very long answer, but my short answer to what you said is I don't think this is a team that worries about extra games at this point because they just went through a stretch where they dealt with a lot of games in May and came out as the hottest team in American soccer right now, American Canadian soccer.
But let's go back to last night again. I did like what I've seen from Blair and Zamali, and on the latest upload works that will be recorded in a few hours, maybe I need a nap first, to be quite honest, guys. So Kevin will have a nap, and I just refer to myself in the third person, so I don't know what that makes of me, but I will have a nap, and then our upload works will be live later on, right here on our Facebook page too, and you will hear Blair and Zamali, Carl Robinson, Mauro Biello, and Patrice Bernier and Maxime Crepeau. So you'll have all those great post-game comments on Off the Woodworks later today. But what was interesting to me, Duane, about last night is, well, Vancouver came back from not the dead, but it could have gone wrong. Like at halftime, I had flashback of a certain night where Montreal beat Toronto 6-0 at home. I had the same feelings. I had the same, I felt the same type of atmosphere, and the fans were getting riled up, and they were asking for the fourth goal and the fifth and the sixth. We were maybe thinking that this game was about to be blown away, and well, it wasn't. They conceded once, and Montreal came right back and scored that fourth goal. But then that second goal by Vancouver made it quite interesting, and at the end, a clear, almost off the line by Yondo. Well, it was Yondo too. Like at the 92nd minute, that literally almost cleared off the line. What could have been the winning, the series clinching goal of Vancouver, and it was it was quite intense.
No, I know that it was, and it was one of those things. Okay, when look, 3-0 in the first half. Everyone, maybe I'll touch on this before we say goodbye today. I was at a Canadian Premier League supporters meeting last night at Scallywags, the famous Scallywags in Toronto, where I was talking to some other Canadian fans, and we were watching the game. And after it got to about 3-0, we sort of checked out a little bit because at that point we know what's going on and it's probably going to be done. But then suddenly it became intense, and as you said, after Montreal scored the fourth goal, we kind of went, oh, okay, well, it's done now. Vancouver had its very minor run. But all of this, I don't think anyone really did the math at that point. When Vancouver scored the second goal, and all of a sudden we go, wait, hold on. Oh,
if they tie it up, they win.
Yeah, well, 4-3 loss would have given it to them, because whoever considers in their mind of what a 4-3 loss scenario is, right? But that, yep. Once they scored that goal, it was basically them tying the game in some ways, because the one more goal would have won it for them. At any rate, it was quite the game. As I said, I do think that the first game of the tie too it wasn't quite as BANAS as that one was, but it was also kind of that tale of two halves, and how badly Vancouver outplayed Montreal in the first half, and then suddenly they switch off, and the penalty gets stopped. Like there was a lot that happened in two games here. I'm not going to go as far to say that
Spencer Ritchie goal on his head the first leg. He stopped point blank Patrice Bernier in the 89th minute and stopped the penalty from Bernier. Though it should have been 3-2 maybe in Vancouver last week. But Spencer Ritchie goaled on his head, and he's not going to pull off miracles back-to-back games. Third-string goalkeeper. No offense to Spencer Ritchie, but the probability of him having another amazing game was very small, and Montreal got lucky there too.
No doubt. Yeah. Look, I'm not going to go so far to say as this rivals that the Eastern Conference Final last year, because the intensity and the importance of that was a little bit higher. And I say that as someone who loves the Voyageurs Cup, but I think we can agree with that. But it's similar in terms of the ebbs and flows and ups and downs and insane amount of goals that makes it one of those things that, we're all lucky to have watched it. And I'll say this too, watching this, and I think about this every year during the Voyageurs Cup. There's a lot of Americans out there, and we have a lot of American listeners. There's a lot of Americans out there that dismiss the Voyageurs Cup, that make fun of it. I'll say this, and I like the U.S. Open Cup too, but in terms of the quality of games that you get in the V Cup every year, in terms of the competition and the narratives and the stories, even though it's such a short little tournament, my God, it in many ways is better than the U.S. Open Cup, because every team takes it seriously. Every team has a rivalry basically in it. You do have just enough of a touch of an upset potential with that one team that comes in. So I think we're lucky to have this tournament, and I think we've seen another Voyageurs Cup Classic. And once again, the poor Whitecaps. The poor Whitecaps.
We can always agree to point the finger towards West. But yeah, those Voyageurs Cup, the home and away aspect of the tournament, I think it has something to do with it too, right? The narrative that a game, the last two games, basically brings, it's something different, and it feels different because that aspect. And in the dying minutes of the game, it's you invested 180 minutes of your playing time, so you have that extra energy to actually fight for it a little bit more because you invested so much into it already. And I think it brings something different to the table. It's 10 years in now, so it's interesting to see that happen too.
Yeah, look, and I think the players, probably at the start of the year, if a player's new to this, they probably think of the Voyageurs because they don't think about it. And then suddenly it happens, and what is happening is that you're in essentially a playoff series in the middle of the season, and all of a sudden you get up for it and you start to play at a higher level, and it reminds me of the MLS playoffs. I just compared this tie to Impact TFC last year, and if Impact and TFC do meet again, and I'm not trying to dismiss Ottawa in a second, we will talk about it, I think, in a moment, but if they do meet again, absolutely, can you imagine either of those teams lying down for that final in the way that maybe the LA Galaxy traditionally have done in the U.S. Open Cup or whatever? That's, I think, what makes the shortness and the smallness of this tournament almost an advantage, and I suspect when it gets bigger, it might lose a little of that, and that's a shame. It does need to get bigger. It does need to get more open, and I encourage that. But at the same time, I think we might lose a little bit of what we're talking about right now.
Yeah, we will. And we might lose the home and away series aspect of it when it gets bigger.
It's too bad.
Yeah, well, that is too bad.
It does feel like a playoff series. All right, look. I'm Toronto, guys, so I'm just going to let you talk for a second here. How does Ottawa win this game tonight? What chance do you give them?
They can't open up. They can't go after it. They have to not defend for their lives, but they have to be very conscious of every single ball touch they have. Conservative, as well as conscious, to make sure they don't give the ball away, to make sure that they stop the transition. You have to foul without getting yellow carded in the midfield to stop that transition. You basically, if Jamaica plays, he can't touch the ball 30 yards close to goal. It's like ultimate Greece in 2004 type of stuff that Ottawa has to pull tonight. They have to make sure that they are in passing lanes, make sure that they stifle the play, they suffocate the play. And they have to play basically anti-football tonight.
Well, yeah, I think that's pretty obvious. And I think they have to foul a lot. And the risk of that, of course, is if they start to foul a lot, then maybe they get yellow cards early. And if they get yellow cards early, then there's a potential of getting down to 10 men. And as much as people want to point to some of TFC's issues last year, breaking down 10 men, I think that might spell disaster for them. I do believe that from a TFC perspective, that if Vasquez does play tonight, that will be the difference maker. You're putting a guy of that quality in the middle of the field. He's going to open things up with his just ability to find lanes and to find, get the ball on people's feet, right? And that's going to be difficult for them to defend. I cannot comprehend them having as disastrous of a half as they did in the second half against Ottawa, where they just seemed to lose the plot. It was like watching TFC from 5 years ago again for a half game. It was a good memory, actually. It's kind of like nostalgic in some ways. But
oh yeah, that's what we used to look like.
Yeah, every road game used to look like that, like Christ. Anyway, no, it was. I just can't imagine that happening again. They do have to play the 3 Canadians. They do have some players missing, but there's so much quality in that team that, look, I'm not going to give a percentage like I did last time, because I don't want Ottawa fans to hate me, because I love Ottawa fans. I might go try, and I am actually going to meet some before the game tonight, rather than go out with my own supporters group who I see all the time. So, really, probably I could use the break. They could use a break from me, but at any rate, so it's a thing. But does anyone really think that they can pull this off? Or are we looking at Impact TFC again? And if that happens, that's going to be something. I have to go to Montreal twice in 2 weeks, man.
Well, yeah, I think that's going to be the case.
It's Canada too.
Yeah, but Montreal treated this home and away series with a stronger second leg lineup. Rested some players for the first leg, avoiding that trip. Vancouver had to play 3 times in 8 days, and they had no choice but to actually have a squad rotation too. But it led to the advantage of Montreal. Toronto dealt with the first game that kind of like the same way. And tonight, yes, they did play the weekend. It's 3 games in maybe 9 days, 8 days, because it was Friday, so it's 9 days. It is still a congested schedule, but I do feel that we'll see maybe not Bradley and Altidore, maybe Javenko, or, well, the Canadian kids from from Toronto have done pretty good recently. Well, right, Hamilton and Ricketts.
Hamilton and Rosario both got
Rosario
goals
too.
Against. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
So I do feel there will be maybe on a run that will continue tonight, if you include last Friday.
We'll see. And look, if Ottawa does pull this off tonight, then, hat tip for them. I've ultimately always said that this tournament will truly reach another level when the first major upset happens in it. And we, TFC won it a couple times when they were pretty bad, but they were still an MLS team. A major upset I'm, considering to be the lower level team has never beaten a higher level team in this tournament, with the exception of the Impact's first win when it was a round robin, which is difficult to put in the same level because Montreal didn't actually beat TFC that year. They drew them twice and relied on Vancouver winning them, which makes it a bit strange. No, I'm not taking anything away from the Impact winning that tournament, but that's really the only upset that's ever happened into it in a different way. And we're talking about TFC 2008 here, which was barely an MLS team. Let's be honest. At any rate, Kevin, go ahead.
No, I was just agreeing with you, and I do feel that Ottawa is going to have its end full tonight, because, well, Toronto just needs 1 goal, to be quite honest. 1-0, Toronto goes through.
Yeah, I think that the only way Ottawa pulls the upset off is if they manage to score first. If that happens, and Toronto starts to panic, and then you never know. And Ottawa, if Ottawa scores first, that means Toronto has to score twice at that point, as we all know, just to force extra time. And if that happens, then there's a possibility that a true bunker, kick it into Rosette every time, might play out. All right, Kevin, before we end the show, I'm just going to do a straight sprint show today, because Kevin had a meeting all day, and I have to actually get going down to meet some people. So it's going to be a very quick show today. But I did want to touch on the meeting I was at last night, just to put some basic information out there, because I know there are a lot of people interested in the CPL. And I do have something that I might tease in a second here. But look, the bottom line on the Toronto area CPL meeting last night is that a couple things were decided that we're going to create. Jamie McLeod, the president of the Voyageurs, is currently engaging in an activity that will allow him to create a blanket umbrella organization for supporters of the Canadian Premier League across the country, where I think we're going to call it like United Support, Canadian Premier League Supporters United, or something like that, something generic at any rate. The idea behind it is that we want to create unity across the country for this project, so that we can show potential sponsors and potential TV partners and potential owners even how much interest there is out there. So I encourage you all, and we will get those links out there, to reach out and do that. We're also in Toronto specific. There is a group out there right now. I will tweet their handle after the show. It's escaping me right now, their name, and I apologize for that, but it's not in front of me, but I will get out there and tweet it for you. Cronenberg, sorry, they're called the Cronenbergs after the director. Anyway, not the beer, which is different. They exist right now, but we're also going to create a unified umbrella Toronto group. One other piece of news about that is that the next meeting of the Toronto area Canadian Premier League supporters will happen on June the 30th. We're going to meet somewhere around Varsity Stadium here in Toronto, because there is a League One Ontario game happening in Varsity Stadium that night that we're all going to go and attend to support the next generation. All right, Kevin, I'm going to end the show with a bit of a mic drop. A bit of not a mic drop so much, but a breaking news, and just let it sit out there. Last night, I also learned and confirmed this morning that there will be a very major Canadian men's national team friendly played in Toronto in the fall. And I'm not going to say specifically who it is, but I know that they're targeting a country that rhymes with Ringland. So we'll just say that and let you dream about that for a moment. Kevin, do you have any final thoughts on the day before we say goodbye?
No, I can't top that. So until tomorrow, 10 a.m., we'll talk about Canada, about Octavio Zambrano, with our guest tomorrow as well. So stay tuned. And if you want to know more about our guest tomorrow, take a look at the sporting news, take a look at the articles, and we'll see you tomorrow. Until then, have a great soccer. You were listening to SPN, the Sports Podcasting Network. Visit us, sportspodcastingnetwork.com.